And that gets us into that conversation about the medical model versus
Right.
the social model. So for some of our listeners who don't know the difference, could you explain the difference between the medical model and the social model of disability?
Sure. I mean, pretty much the way I look at it is the medical model is that the person with the disability is the problem. And so we need to solve the problem of the disability by basically, teaching them and modifying them so that they can function, in the able society. The social model says, well, the problem is that society is not respecting this person's gifts and for who they are, and that we can't actually, it's not about eradicating the disability, it's how do we welcome and value people and accept that disability is a wonderful part of the human condition, and we just need to adapt our world so that it's not made only for a certain set of people. Sounds easy, not in a functional way. And back to Shelley's point, it's a sadly amusing thing that goes on is one of the ways that you receive support in the developmental services system is a process called the support intensity scale, which is an assessment process that takes 6 to 8 hours of questions. Now, if you look at kind of what are the traits common to persons with intellectual disabilities, an 8-hour verbal interview is probably about the last thing you come up with as this is a good way to communicate with this individual. And so we have people so exhausted from this process that they're leaving the room and the process is being completed without them as an accommodation. And we at LiveWorkPlay are kind of saying, well, if the interview is not accessible to the individuals that are supposed to be assessed, we need to modify the process, not accommodate the person by saying, well, you can leave and we'll finish it without you. So this is one of the issues. And in Alberta, they've actually determined that the support intensity scale is a dehumanizing process, and they no longer use it.
It'd be dehumanizing for everybody.
I have to agree. One of the things it asks you about is sort of your urination habits.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, which, if you want to talk about it, but to be required to complete it in order to get at, funding and supports, I find, this can be, we have had individuals who have basically been moved to tears and left the room because they feel, dehumanized.
The other thing too is I know when I had to do the disability tax credit form, it was all about what I couldn't do. I can't walk independently. I said, of course I can. And then the doctor said, well, no, they mean without like a cane or a dog. Yeah. I can't read independently. I almost said, heck with it. I don't want this credit if it means that I am portrayed as why doesn't it just say is blind, totally blind? Like, why does it have to get into the stuff I can't do? Because I don't view that I can't do those things. I can do those things, but I have I've accommodated myself. It's a kind of amazing to everyone thinks that I want to see. Mm-hmm. I've never seen once more than I see, which is a little bit light. I have no desire to do. I'm curious about it, yes. But it would be so traumatic for me to get vision that if someone said, do you want $1 million, you want vision, I'd take $1 million and then I'd get a self-driving car and get technologies and, travel and do things. I have no desire to. So I have no desire to be fixed in that way, in the medical model way. And in effect, they can't do it. At the moment, they can't do it. And I don't have no desire for that. But I do have desire for a world where I feel included all the time. Like that's, of course. So it's so interesting because even people that know I'm competent and know I'm smart still ask me those things and seem shocked when I say, well, no, I have no desire for that.
I think you just defined the medical model and social model much better than I did because... And I just want to give a shout out to families who are a big part of the Ombudsman report. And you touched on this whole issue of having to focus on deficits. And this is the horrible stress on families that to get resources, they often end up having to emphasize the negatives of their own child. And I think that is very hard, and we need to turn that around and let's focus on what are the accommodations so they can have a full life in the community, not on what are their problems that need to be addressed.
How true, how true. Now, in case anybody's just joining us, we're at 9:33 right now, so we're about halfway through the show. You're listening to Welcome to My World on CKCU FM 93.1, or you might be listening on the internet at www.ckcufm.com. And we're in conversation with Keenan Wellar, who is the co-leader of LiveWorkPlay. And we're going to take a little bit of a music break right now. We're going to play a song. Again, it's another kind of somber song, but I think it speaks volumes about what we're talking about. This song is by Ian Robb, and of course Ian Robb is, you may know him from Finest Kind, who is no longer together now. And Ian did a guest appearance on Canadian Spaces, which is our flagship folk music show, heard Saturday mornings at 10 o'clock. Now, special shout out to Chris White and the gang at CKCU's Canadian Spaces, and Chopper McKinnon, who started the whole thing 37 years ago. Believe it or not, that show is 37 years old, I think, today. So, congratulations. Now, Ian made a guest appearance on that show, and you can go back and listen to that program because all of our programs are archived at ckcufm.com. But when I was listening to that program, I heard this song. And it's called They've Taken It Away. And again, the words are just so true. So we're going to listen to Ian Robb singing They've Taken It Away on CKCU 93.1.